fantastic, really good. And I don't know whether we're going to learn Al-Haseda, whether we're going to learn the book of Proverbs in order, but for now, I thought we just plow on from where we left last time. We're still in the first chapter, and we're going to read a chunk leading up to the end of the first chapter of the book of Proverbs. Again, it's divided into, it is conceptually divided into chunks, and we looked at a particular little piece of the story of the book of Proverbs. Last time, I'm going to choose the next chunk there. So I'm going to share screen. Okay, there we go. Great. So last time we did that thing about people lying in wait to ambush someone, and the bit that we focused in on at the end was quite this obscure piece which seemed to suggest that if you're lying in ambush on someone, really you're lying in ambush on yourself. And that was where our conversation went. So that ends in verse 19 of the first chapter, and then verse 20 through to 33 is also a unit, and it's a unit which is which presents a long speech. It's a long speech primarily, and it's a speech in the name of Chochmot. It's the voice of wisdom itself speaking, which is very interesting, very, very unusual and very interesting. So we're going to hear a long presentation as if wisdom herself is talking. If you look at that first verse there, verse 20, Chochmot v'chutz tarona. Oh, actually, I wonder if I can find this on it. Do you see all those horrible red lines there?
Yes.
We do, don't we? Let me get rid of that. Hold on. Try again, see if I can find this somewhere else. Proverbs. Sorry about that. Let me try again. That should be good. Okay, great. That is a PDF. Okay. Chochmot b'chutz tarona barachavot titen kola. Like you'll see that many of the verses are divided into two, and they sort of the first half and the second half kind of parallel to each other. I think that's all the way through the book. So Chochmot, like wisdoms, but it's really one person speaking. Like it's in the plural. Chochmot, wisdom outside cries aloud. Wisdom is crying out outside. Barachavot titen kola. In the broad places, she gives her voice. I'll read the second verse, verse 21 there, because this leads up to the beginning of what she says. That Barosh homiot tikra. The word homia. We see that it's in Hatikva. Nefesh Yehudi homia. The soul of a Jew murmurs, like cries out. So at the top of the noisy places or the murmuring places, she calls the fitrei sha'arim, at the entrances of the gates, ba'ir amareya tomer, in the city she says her words. Okay, so and then what we get until the end of the chapter is things that she says. So like this is rather strange. I mean, is any like who is this wisdom? Like, what is it? What does it mean that wisdom's talking like this? What do we have to say about that? Has anyone got any sort of reflections on the fact that we're about to hear the voice of the feminine voice of wisdom and what she says?
Greek. Sounds Greek.
Sounds Greek. Great. Why do you say that, Nathan?
I just have a feeling. Don't you have symbols in a feminine form in Greek myths?
Yeah. Well, I would go even further. I would definitely agree with you, Nathan, but I'd go even further and say she sounds like she's like it's a personification of wisdom, which we're really unused to, and that's it's a little bit like the goddess of wisdom that's speaking. It's like, you know, if you had to put it in a, if you were going for like Greek mythology, then you'd say the goddess of wisdom spoke, and this is what she said. Right? Because whatever poetic form this is taking, it doesn't say, it's not prophetic. Like in the book of in the prophets, we'd expect the prophet to say something like, "Thus saith the Lord," and then you'd leap into what God says.
Mhm.
But here it's not God speaking, it's actually wisdom herself speaking. It's like this piece of this narrative has wisdom herself talking at us. And in that sense, it's like it's a bit shocking. She's a woman. She has a voice. She doesn't reflect the voice of God, she reflects her own voice. She's not saying, I heard this from Elohim. This is the actual personified voice of wisdom speaking, and she's a she.
And she's shouting to us. She's not hiding her voice.
She's not being polite. No, she is calling out. She's out in the streets. Which is unclear. Like, why is she not whispering in the inside, like talking in the synagogue or talking to us at home? She's like, she's outdoors. She's in the street. She's in the noisiest places of the city, the entrances of the gates where everyone hangs out. And then we get to hear what she says.
Wisdom is easily available to us.
Right.
It's making its voice heard to us if we were to listen.
Right. And she's not the voice of God again. We came across this last time as well. This sense of like, what is this literature that allows? I mean, you've never seen that anywhere else in the Bible, where a female personified form of knowledge is talking out loud to the people. Now, is that just poetic? It's certainly mythological. It's definitely a kind of mythic language. It's the language like the Greek myths. I'm with Nachum. It's very Greek. It's even pre-philosophical. It's like the language that you might expect from, you know, what a particular Greek goddess had said or says, and we could listen or not listen. So it's a shocking piece of literature again, very unexpected that a female personification of some force in the universe talks to us loudly out on the street.
Is wisdom always a plural word?
No, we saw chokhmah. There's just, I'm going to split down so that you can see the word chokhmot. Chokhmot here is, I translate as wisdom. It could be wisdoms, but it's really she speaks in the single. Like it's one person speaking. But the fact that they have it in the plural there it does appear elsewhere. If you look in this psalm, which is Psalm 29, which is a well-known psalm, Lamnatzech Livni Korach is more Psalm 29, verse like for the leader of Psalm of the sons of Korach. Hear this, you people, give ear, you inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor. Verse 4, Pi yedaber chokhmot, v'hagut libi tevunot. My mouth shall speak chokhmot, wisdoms, whatever that is. V'hagut libi tevunot, and the meditation of my heart shall be understanding. So it is sometimes the place that chokhmah appears in the plural in this literature. I translate again. It's in the single. It's not really. I don't know whether it means whether having it in the plural wisdoms means something different. But chokhmah appears in other places, is what I'm saying. Normally, I think when she's not personified, these kinds of personifications of the voice of wisdom only appear in a few places in the book of Proverbs. No, it appears in a later chapter in the book of Proverbs. But so most of it is just like, what is wisdom? But here we have this Greek mythic style wisdom herself speaking, and then it appears in the plural. But I don't know what to make of that. I don't know what that means. I don't know why it is that she appears in the plural. She's chokhmot when she speaks, and she's chokhmah when we're working out what it is that she's saying. I much don't know, Richard. I didn't read anything that I didn't read anything.
It's not trying to say that it's a form of universal wisdom.
Well, that was my suggestion last time as well. Was that, and that came up in our kind of introductory piece of this. Was that this is not Torah. The later rabbis, the rabbinic tradition tries to say that Chokhmah is Torah, and that they're the same thing. But in the Bible, they're mamash not the same thing. They're not the same thing. This is another source of knowledge in the world, and she is the personification of something else. This isn't Torah. This is kind of raw wisdom. Like, I think that was expressed in Cheryl expressed this in the 2 sessions ago, where she said this is the voice of Brian Chernett. He's not religious. He's just wise. What does Brian say? And Brian says, I am the source of wisdom, experience, wisdom, how to lead your life well. Like what's being addressed is not Torah. What's being addressed is some, as you say, some universal sense of what is the good life for human beings. So it's interesting that was it's very, very interesting. The Bible has books dedicated, a book, at least one book, maybe 2, 3 books dedicated to asking the question of what does the good life look like? What does it mean to be a wise person? And the answer isn't keep Shabbos. The answer is not keep Shabbat, because that's not universal wisdom. That's Jewish stuff. And so the answer is, it is a from answer, but it's not a religious answer in the way that we would expect it from other books of the Bible, where you're expected to be, where the answer is framed in terms of the Jewish covenant. Like most of the Bible, if you want to know how to be good, then they'll say, well, keep the covenant, keep the deal you made with God, Mount Sinai, follow all the rules. That's not going to be the answer that these books are throwing out, because as you rightly point out, we're talking about, this is wisdom speaking, and anyone could hear her, Jew, Christian, non-Jew, anyone can hear that voice.
But it's remarkable that she's a woman.
Go on.
Well, it's just remarkable that women don't have anything to say, really.
Yeah.
And here, this woman has something to say about wisdom of all things.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing.
It is amazing. What the hell's going on? I mean, it's like it's amazing, isn't it? It's really interesting. Is it the kind of suppressed voice? I mean, it would be blasphemous to say that she's a goddess, but she sounds like she's a goddess speaking. It's like, wisdom spoke up, and this was her voice, and this is what she said. Like, she's not quoting somebody else. She isn't quoting Elohim. Maybe Chochmot is like reaching back into some other traditions, more universal traditions of this voice of the goddess. I don't know. I mean, it's whatever it is. It's embodied. It's like, it's not presented in. It's a piece of poetry that says she's out there. She's speaking.
Yeah.
She talks. Like, how are we supposed to understand that? Who is she? Who is this woman who talks in that way? It's very, very interesting. I agree with you, Cheryl.
Well, she's everybody's wife.
Why is the wife the source? I mean, without being flippant, why is the wife the source of wisdom to a man?
Well, but women are.
Why? Why is that? I agree with you. I'm not denying that.
Or maybe because they're not so encumbered with all the things about surviving as a family. And they have to do it, but a man has to provide. Oh, I don't know. I'm playing around here.
I don't know either.
It is weird.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying. Really,
and what's interesting is that we don't know about it.
Yeah.
Us women don't know about it particularly.
Right. Well, we saw last time we saw Richard. I think it was Richard who got excited by the idea of right at the start. Hold on, blah 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 blah. Maybe it was you said. Hold on, I've lost it for a second. Oh, here we go. The bit that verse 8. Shma bani musar avicha. Hear, my son, the moral instruction of your father. But al titosh Torah timecha. Don't abandon the Torah of your mother. Like, don't abandon your mother's Torah. And Torah there doesn't mean Torah. Torah there does not mean the Sefer Torah. Torah there means that what she teaches you, like what your mother teaches, which is not. It's the teaching of your mother, like what your mother tells you. So right from the outset, a woman's voice has been like, it's, you're learning from your father, you're learning from your mother. Maybe something different. Maybe there is a difference in terms of what you learn from your father and your mother. but your mum is right in there, like your mother, and that gets repeated. That motif gets repeated over and over again in terms of the book.
It is curious there that they give the moral instruction to your father,
Yeah.
the teaching to your mother,
Yeah.
rather than giving both to your parents.
Yeah.
Because you really would get both you would get both the morals and your teaching from both your parents. But they seem to assign one to your father and the other to your mother.
They have assigned that. I mean, they have assigned it. Like, this is a very, most societies, we've done something very, very weird in the West in the last 100 years or so. This dissolving of gender is a really modern phenomenon. Obviously, like, it's not like most societies are heavily gendered, and I would also say that most societies, women, broadly speaking, hang around with women most of their time, and men, broadly speaking, hang around with men most of the time. The idea that we have that when men and women find everything within their relationships with each other is a very modern idea. Like, most tribal societies have great swathes of time where the women are with the women and the men are with the men, and they have this very clearly defined roles. And if you look at the way that Judaism evolved, it was clearly thus. Like, it was clearly the case that there were different roles being carved out for men and women. The question is, from a modern perspective, is that essential to Judaism? And Haredi Judaism says yes. It's essentially, it's part of the teachings of Judaism that things should be gendered in that way, and that the gender itself would be a kind of essential part of the way that the Torah views life. I don't believe that's the case. I think those ideas are historically contingent. I think that the Torah speaks to every generation, and that the question of gender is secondary as opposed to primary. I think it sort of comes later. But this kind of statement, like, hear the moral instruction of your father, don't abandon the Torah of your mother, it's coming within a world where those are different things, maybe. And then we can say, well, what is the difference between the Musar that you get from your father and the Torah that you get from your mother? And I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know. But that comes back to the bit we're going to look at today, which is about this female goddess, this wisdom speaking on the street. And she's loud and she's out there, and she has a voice and she says stuff, and she is the embodied voice of wisdom, and she's a she. There's no doubt that she's a she. Should we look at what she says? Let's look at what she says. Okay, so now we're jumping into there are about 10, 11 verses where she's speaking and she's not interrupted, and she has what to say. Okay, so is it all right? I'll read it, and it's good to read the Hebrew as well. So we'll read the Hebrew in English just to get a bit of a sense of the sound of how it goes as well. This is the words of her. Ad matai p'ta'im te'avu peti. How long will you simple people love being simple, love simplicity?
Where is this, Joe? What verse?
Verse 22. It should be
All
on
right.
your screen.
Oh, yes.
This is the beginning of what she says. V'leitzin latson chamdu lahem. And people who mock would love mockery, delight in mockery. Uchsilim yisnu dat. And fools will hate knowledge. How long is that going to carry on? How long will the simple ones enjoy being simple? The people who mock. Late sanut is sort of people who don't think, who just laugh at everything. Like people who laugh at everything. So leitzan is a clown in modern Hebrew. And leitzin and latson, leitsanut, is as a sort of approach to life where nothing means anything and where everything's funny. Everything is funny. Everything is like a joke. And the kasilim are the fools. Like, so there's three different people who are being addressed. How long will each of them be stuck in their own worlds? Tashuvu letochachti. The word if isn't in there. Like, you will or would, if you would return, make tshuva to my rebuking or reproof, hine abia lechem ruchi, then I would express. The habia really means to pour out. I would pour out my spirit on you, va'adia divarai etchem, and I would make you understand my words. If you would if you simpletons, clowns, and fools would just be prepared to respond, turn towards my rebuking, then I would pour out my spirit on you. I would help you to understand stuff. Ya'an karati v'tuma'eni, but since I called out and you refused it, you rejected it, natiti yadi, I reached out my hand, I gestured, ve'ein makshiv, since I reached out to you and you didn't listen, since I tried to talk to you, but you've pushed me away, v'tifra'u kol atzati, and you've disrupted, nifroa means to kind of shake into disorder. You have dismissed or disordered all my advice. You've rejected all my advice. V'tochachti lo avitam, you didn't accept or consent or want my rebuke. Gamani, because I reached out to you, but you blocked everything that I've tried to say to you. This is wisdom herself speaking. Gamani, also me. Be'eidechem eschak, I will laugh at your calamity. El-ag b'vo pachtechem, I will mock you when your fear comes to be, when your fear is realized. B'vo kashoa pachtechem, it's the word shoah appearing in the Bible. The word like shoah, like for the Holocaust is referred to as a shoah. This is, I think, one of the main locations of shoah in the Bible. When your fear comes like a shoah, as a shoah, desolation or devastation, when your fear comes true in desolation, ve'eidechem kesufa ye'eteh, and your calamity comes in a storm. V'vo alechem tzara v'tzuka, when distress and anguish come upon you, as yikra'uni v'lo e'eneh, then they will call to me, and I will not answer. Yeshacharuni v'lo yimatsuni, they will earnestly seek me, literally to get up early in the morning. They will come in the morning to seek me, but they will not find me, says wisdom. Again, wisdom speaking. Tachat ki sanudat, because they hated knowledge. The yirat Adonai lo bacharu, and they did not choose the fear of God. Lo avu la'atzati, they did not accept my advice. Na'atsu kol tochachti, they despised all my rebuking. V'yochlu mipri darkam, they will eat from the fruit of their own path. Umi moat sotehem yisba'u, and they will become filled up with their own counsel. They'll eat the fruit of their own path and be sated with their own advice, their own counsel. Ki meshuvat p'ta'im tahargem, for the looking backwards or the backsliding of the simpleton will kill them. V'shalvat kesilim ta'abdem, and the calm of fools will destroy them. V'shomei ali yishkon betach, but someone who listens to me will dwell secure. V'sha'anan mipachad ra'ah, quiet without the fear of evil. That is the end of what she says in that little statement. Okay.
So not showing much compassion.
Say again?
Wisdom doesn't show much compassion.
She doesn't in this. Why? Well, because she says, you won't be able to seek me if you reject me.
So is this saying that wisdom is everywhere for us to see, and it's never hidden? It's always present, and it's up to us to take it or not take it.
Yeah.
But even if we're not seeking it, wisdom, we will stumble upon it at some point because it's everywhere.
Yeah.
But it's up to us whether to take it or not. And
Right.
if we don't take it, then we're stupid.
Right. Well, we're either simple, or we're mockers, or we're foolish. Like there's some different models there of like what it is that makes you be a person who can't hear the voice of wisdom. But I totally agree with your image that it's everywhere, because she's out there. I mean, like, again, she's out on the street, she's shouting loud, she's like Tarona means like she screams, she's out there shrieking. It's not like you can't hear her. She's like out there on the street, she's in all the places where people hang out. She's in the entrance to the city, she's in the marketplace, her voice is like way out there. It's not esoteric. It's not the kind of thing that you can only hear if you're prepared to attend to a very particular kind of received tradition. It's not like you have to be from to hear it. It's out there for everyone. And the things that block it, like, she's very upset. This is the personification of wisdom. She's very upset that people wouldn't hear her tochacha, which means her rebuke. Like there was a voice that was in the street that was a voice of rebuke. It was the voice of rebuke. Tochacha means like you've done something wrong. And that word appears over and over and over again. Like you just wouldn't accept my rebuke. And that's fatal, apparently. Not being able to hear the voice of rebuke is fatal. And what causes that is either because you're petty, you're simple, you just don't understand the world. You're not sophisticated enough in your understanding. You're a simpleton, or you're someone who laughs at everything. A leitzan.
So basically, you're on Facebook all the time.
What do you mean? Explain that.
Well, if you're on Facebook, it's just all very silly stuff. You know, all these
I see
social
what you're saying.
media.
Right. Life's a joke.
It's all simpleton stuff, in my view, anyway. And you're not really taking on wisdom, which is always present for us to take it on board. But a lot of people don't take it.
Facebook, or I don't know, like
Instagram,
TikTok,
all these things.
whatever it is, they're very compelling. They get into your skin. There's like a kind of, I don't know, like you're seduced into that world of, I don't know whether that's simplicity or foolishness, but that's not.
I wouldn't call it wisdom.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's wisdom. That's true. But
anyway,
you're right. There is something. There is like, what is it? Like, first of all, like what? I mean, this is such a weird piece of literature because it's the personified goddess of wisdom speaking to us, and she's saying, my voice is out there, and it was the voice of tochacha. It was the voice of rebuke. It was the voice that kind of said to you, you've done something wrong, or you're not doing the right thing, or you've erred. And if you turn from that, that's the beginning of terrible. Like everything, like, if only in verse 23, if you would only kind of turn your face towards my rebuke, if you would like return to my rebuke, then I would put my spirit into you and you would understand. You would get everything I'm trying to say if you could only hear that first thing, which is like to hear the voice of rebuke from the personified goddess of wisdom. And there's something about being, as you say, there's something about like being stuck at, what you said, stuck on TikTok, that would mean that you couldn't hear that. Is it TikTok or TikTok? What is it? TikTok.
I think it's TikTok. I'm not
TikTok,
on it.
Right. So you would like something about being stuck in, there's something that would prevent you from being able to turn towards rebuke. Like, who wants to be rebuked? I mean, geez, like, no one likes being rebuked. Like, but wisdom rebukes you. Wisdom rebukes you.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Like, what? So it's such a weird piece of literature here. Like, she is speaking, and she's like speaking to these people and saying that my voice is out there. I was rebuking. You could have heard that. You could have had an ear to hearing that, but you turned from it, and you. There's one piece here which I think is fascinating in terms of this. Someone else want to say something, or we, like, what does it? I'm very interested to hear like what, like, because this is all psychological. It's a personification of a certain relationship with this thing called called chokhmot, this female voice of wisdom that you may or may not hear in life. You may not be open to hearing.
Is it your conscience? Joel?
Yeah, no, I'm listening. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Or is she speaking through God? Is it God speaking?
No, it isn't.
No.
She never says, "Thus saith the Lord."
Yeah.
She's not revelation in that sense. She's
No.
not like revealed wisdom in the sense of like that could be written in a book or something like that. She's not like that.
Well, she's probably something that's in all of us.
Right.
She's us.
Right.
But if you replace the first person with the third person and turned all the eyes into God and put it into the mouth of a Jeremiah or Isaiah, this would not look that peculiar, particularly verse 28, which I'm sure I've seen in Nevi'im.
Yes.
You will call God and God will not answer you.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, well, this could have been written by a secularist, if not for the second half of verse 29.
Because that's where they mention God. They mention the fear of you. We saw that before as well. Like the source of that was right at the beginning. They say, what's the source of wisdom is verse 7.
Yeah.
Very, very first piece of wisdom. Yirat Adonai Reshit Da'at. The fear of God is the beginning of knowledge. Like if you don't fear God, then you're stuffed. I mean, that's the beginning of knowledge. We talked a little bit about that this week, Cheryl, about this idea of fear and the need for fear, like some kind of sense of there's something I have to fear. I have to fear sin, something like that. I have to fear sin in some profound way. I have to be committed to good and not to evil, and I have to like be scared of doing the wrong thing in some profound way. It's not all just love. It's like there's also a fear piece in there. But as Nachum said, like, you know, it could have been a prophet talking about God, but this isn't God. This is wisdom speaking. It's someone else. I mean, Laura's question, I think, is right. Like, who the hell is this? Who is this personification of wisdom who speaks to us in that kind of way? And is loud. She's out on the street. She's out there. You could hear me. Like you could, if only you listened, you could hear me. It's not even listening. It's that you hear me. Everyone hears me. But some people turn towards me and some people turn away from me. It's not that you can't hear. It's that everyone hears her. Everyone heard her. Some people laughed when they heard her and turned away, and some people turned towards that voice, and they were okay. They were like, and then once you turn towards her, everything is good because she'll pour her spirit into you. Like the wisdom will be then poured into you, and you'd understand what I'm going to say. But there's a whole bunch of people out there who heard me. I called out, but you refused. In verse 24, Tzuma'eni, you refused it. You just refused, and you didn't attend. Like you didn't like verse 25. The tochachti lo avitem, you didn't consent to my rebuke. Very powerful language. Like you didn't want it. You didn't want to hear me. You heard me, but you didn't consent to internalize it. You didn't bring it into you, the idea of being told off by wisdom.
I think that's why Laura's point that it may be your conscience is probably near to the mark, actually, because it's something about it's like a big metaphor, isn't it? It's like this is something inside us all. Right. There's not a bloody woman walking around wisdom. There is wisdom inside. She's inside us.
And what does it mean to laugh at that? What does it mean when that voice calls to you loudly and you're a leitzan? You kind of joke with it. You make it into something light. You laugh at it. Because I think there's a measure for measure here. Like I think who was it who said that this seems pretty brutal? Like it's not very forgiving. She's not a forgiving voice. This wisdom, like you. Now there's a measure for measure. Like verse 22, you laughed at her, and she's going to laugh at you. Like when push comes to shove, if you laugh at this thing, it will come back and bite you. Which is
that's why I said there's no compassion in this. If you've got the option for wisdom, whatever that means, and you don't avail yourself of it,
Yeah.
It's been shouted at you like a town crier that you could have it.
Yeah.
And if you don't have it, well, your life is therefore, I won't say without meaning, but you are doomed if you don't try and improve yourself.
Yeah.
And it's saying it's not saying, well, you're a fool and I feel sorry for you. It's saying you're a fool and you've not availed yourself of it. That's
and
what I meant.
You won't be able to catch me later. Like you won't.
Yeah.
Like when push comes to shove, I won't be there for you. There's one thing maybe at the end here where I think that she emphasizes that her voice. She says, verse 31. It's really interesting. Like they will eat the fruit of their own path. Meaning, and the second half, and they will be sated. Sovea is to be full, to be filled up. They're going to be filled up with their own advice.
Yeah.
Like they won't. The part of I think the explanation as to why it is they won't be able to find their way back again is that they're actually going to be full of their own something that isn't me. They'll be full of something else, and there's no room inside them. They've already eaten. They could have eaten my fruit, but they ate their own fruit.
It's saying, as you sow, so shall you reap.
Right, and that is who you will be. You're full of the other thing, which isn't wisdom. You're full of your own advice, and you're full of you did get a chance to eat in life. You ate well from the fruit of your own path, and then you filled up with your own eitzah. And I was trying to give you eitzah. I was trying to give you advice. Wisdom was trying to give you advice. And if you'd have eaten that, you'd have been great. But you decided to eat. You decided to fill yourself up on something else. And once you did that, there was no room inside you for me to come in. Very, very. I mean, it's weird literature, but very. It's not punitive. It's like consequences. There's consequences to not being open to tochacha, to not being open to being rebuked by the voice of wisdom. So the way Laura said it, it's like when your conscience whispers in your ear, and if you laugh at that, if you make a joke out of that, or if you're if you're petty, if you're too simple to hear it, you can't. If you're too simple to hear it, or if you make a joke out of it, you laugh at the notion of hearing the voice of your own conscience, the way that you're reading it, Laura, then that's devastating for your personality. There's something that implodes in you, or you become full of something else in a way that is very problematic in terms of your being.
I think this is really interesting, Joel. It could be used for feedback. It could be used as a text when I teach feedback.
Yeah.
Because it's about feedback. It is
about feedback. It is. It really is. And that notion, tochacha, that word is a word that you know. It's the word that appears in Leviticus, which is the word for feedback, for being told off by somebody else.
Right.
You should surely rebuke your neighbor.
Yes.
Like so that word is one of the key phrases here. Like verse 30, lo avu la'atzati, you couldn't accept my advice. Na'atsu kol tochachti, you despised my feedback.
Yeah.
Like so what does that mean? It's very interesting. Like, and that's I'm having a bit of a problem at work at the moment about people who can't take any feedback at all. And it's really difficult. It's so difficult. Now, what does it mean that someone can't take feedback? They
they're full up.
They're full up. They're full of something else. They're
full up their own advice. They're full up in their own beliefs about themselves.
Right, and it's so interesting here. Like we have that on a personal level. We would say, look, I want someone to take feedback from me, and I want them to accept my advice. And it's like that. This is personified into the voice of a woman, and she's called wisdom. She's the goddess of wisdom, and she is saying to humanity, I'm here knocking on the door, and I want you to hear my advice, my rebuke, my feedback.
Yeah.
And there are people who just can't hear that. They just can't hear the feedback of this woman. Maybe it's because it's a woman speaking. I don't know. Like some people can't hear women when they speak. I don't know if there's a gender thing going on there about the fact that she's a goddess and the fact that she's a woman is like. But I don't get the impression that that's the overwhelming issue here. The overwhelming issue is that there are people who are full and can't take it. They can't ingest.
The only way you can take feedback from somebody is if you have a relationship with them. It's got to be in the right relationship, and that nobody's got a relationship with her.
Yeah.
And your people at your place have got a problem in their relationship with you, so they can't hear and accept what you have to give, the wisdom you have to give them.
Right.
Because they're full up on their own. Oh, I really like this. We should have done this years ago.
Yeah.
But Cheryl, is it not because also they're not, well, are we saying the same thing? They're just not receptive.
Yeah.
They're not able, they're not able to take that feedback for various reasons. It could be because they're being over defensive. It could be because they have low self-esteem. It could be.
It could be many things. But the thing is, if it's if it's not the right relationship, they won't be able to take it. If you haven't got a relationship where you actually respect and trust the other person, you're not going to listen to what they have to say.
But what about a parent and a child relationship, which you think they would be open, but very often they are not?
No.
So maybe that just makes it very complicated. I don't know.
Oh, it's interesting. It's an interesting thing.
Let's read one more verse, and like this is great stuff. This is really interesting stuff. Let's read verse 32. I found verse 31 so potent. This idea of being full, I thought was really interesting. That you're, you're full of yourself. I suppose.
Yeah.
We would say, what do we say in English? She's full of herself. He's full of herself.
Oh yes.
Right. We say like someone's full, and I think that's the image here as well. Like you've already eaten the fruit of your own derech, your own way, and you're just full, and there isn't really the possibility of hearing this personified female goddess telling you anything.
There's no room. There's no
room in you, which is interesting. Verse 32. Ki meshuvat ta'im tahargen. The shuv, the return. Language here is complicated. It's often translated as backsliding. The sort of because the turning around of the simple will kill them. I think it means something like the fact that they won't look me in the eye, the fact they keep turning away from me, in the end will kill them. Shalvat kisilim ta'abdem, the calm of fools will destroy them. It means that there's a way of being in life where you're too happy, you're too calm, you're sort of committed to not having your sense of who you are disrupted by this voice of this female voice, this voice of wisdom. And it's shalvat. Like shalvat is almost always a good thing. Shalva means like inner calm, but here she's saying like the inner calm of an idiot is what will destroy them, because they have equanimity. Someone who won't feel feedback is at peace with themselves, and they shouldn't be at peace with themselves because they should hear the voice that comes and tells them to disrupt their inner life. It's the voice that's like her voice is a disruptive voice. And it disrupts your inner calm. There's times when calm is the wrong thing to be. Like you shouldn't be happy. like shalva almost always means like a calm inner space, something like that. And here they're saying, well, it's dafka that inner calm that's your problem, because it's your satisfaction with what you have that means you can't hear a voice from the outside that disrupts you. And it's chokhmah, it's wisdom that's that voice. So there's like and then conversely, right at the very end, verse 33, but if you actually do listen to me, if you're prepared to listen to my voice, shomei ali tishkon beta, you will dwell secure. You'll have like secure foundations in your life, the shanan and calm and quiet, mipachad ra'ah, without the fear of evil. Not that evil won't come upon you, but you won't have the fear of evil. You won't have the fear of evil. You won't be rattled by fear. If you could be open to hearing that voice, then you won't live a life of fear.
I'm still having difficulty understanding 32, verse 32. Because it is very complicated. For the return of the simple, if you act in a simple way, or
it's their inability. When it says backslide, I think what it means is their incapacity to look me wisdom in the face and be in relationship with me. They keep turning away. They backslide. They can't hold my eye.
Right.
They can't hear me. That is what's going to kill them in the end. It's their incapacity to look me in the eye, wisdom, and talk to me. They keep turning away from me, and their inner calm destroys them. Like when they look away from me, they're wanting to maintain an inner calm.
Okay.
And they don't want their life disrupted by hearing this voice, which is the voice of topacha, the voice of rebuke. And that's the voice that's out on the street that everyone should be listening to. So, like, back to Adam's, I mean, it's really psychologically interesting as a kind of model of like first this voice that's out there. It's not the Torah, it's the voice of wisdom. She's speaking out loud so everyone can hear. Everyone hears her voice. Some people like get the hell out of there and don't want to hear it, can't hear it, aren't prepared to be disrupted on the inside by hearing that voice. And those people are stuffed, according to this. They're stuffed. And the people who do hear it are okay. And they, in the end, will have security. They'll have an inner security, confidence, an inner confidence.
But it's right, because if you don't take feedback, if you just are so arrogant, whatever, and you don't take feedback, you'll never change. You're not going to grow. You're not going to change. And it's you are stuffed.
You're stuck, right? Yeah, you're stuck.
No, there's an interesting comment here in the Jewish Study Bible.
Oh, please, fantastic.
Del Berlin and Marx v. Breffler, which seems to back Laura up. So
which verse?
Well, they're focusing on what Yirat Adonai means.
Yes, right.
So they focus in verse 7 and verse 29.
Yeah.
And they say here that fear of the Lord is the ground for wisdom to grow in. Yeah. It is essentially conscience.
Right.
In its most basic form, in the untutored child, it is unreflective fear of consequences. As wisdom develops, fear of God becomes a cognitive awareness of what God wants and does, and this type of fear is equivalent to knowledge of God. So fear of God is effective in keeping one from evil, even in secret deeds, and even in spheres of behavior where the law does not apply.
Lovely. So what's the beginning of that, Nachum? What's the, according to them, like what's the first seed of that kind of?
Verse 7.
No, but just say it, like, what is that? What's that in a child? What is it that a child has or doesn't have?
Well, they're saying the child has unreflective fear of consequences.
Fear of consequences, right? The idea that I don't.
No, they don't have fear. It says unreflected fear.
Right. Say that again, Cheryl.
It's not fear of consequences. It's unreflected fear. It means they haven't got a fear of
They don't understand what consequences there'll be as a result of their actions.
Right, but they have to learn that. You have to learn it. You have to develop a conscience, a sense of like the possibility of doing the wrong thing, something like that. And the idea that I want to distance myself from doing the wrong thing, that's a conscience. It's like I don't want to do bad in the world.
So the essential question from me to Laura would be, where does one acquire a moral conscience? And presumably that's verse 8, because you're going to learn in the first instance from your parents.
Right.
But you asked, from where does it start as a basic thing of a child? A child is the punishment, and then later on they begin to think about it, becomes more cognitive. Isn't it? You don't I don't know, I'm trying to think of an easy example, you know, just a simple punishment or a...
Is it punishment or is it,
Or
I
is
don't
it...
know, I'm thinking about children who like, I remember like putting my kids when they were tiny and their friends would come over and they would like grab things from them and they'd cry. And it, or they'd bite them, and they'd bite each other.
Mm.
And it was like, they just bite each other. And then at a certain point you realize that, well, you know, biting causes pain. Someone, I bite them, they bite me. There's like, I want what I want, but I also don't want, I don't know, I don't want to cause the pain to the other person to get what I want. There's a consequence to all that stuff. There's like, sharing's so damn complicated. Like it's not, but it's not God, is it, Nachum? It's not like, is it? It's not like, you know, God tells you want to share your toy. It's more like some basic sense of like I don't want to do harm because I don't want to be harmed or something like that. I don't know. Laura would know more because you've done time with young children.
Yeah, but it's you don't want to because you're doing something that you your parents or your teacher, you know, it's they're making it that it's wrong, that it's
That's very interesting.
You know, if a child hits another couple and said, "Well, go and sit down," we never had a naughty step, but we had a chair where they could think about it. Then afterwards you go up to them and say, you know, did you think that was nice, and blah 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 blah.
Right.
So immediately you're excommunicating their behavior,
Right.
On a very low level. I mean, that's like a 3-year-old level.
Right. Very interesting. I think coming back to Adam, back to the question of like, maybe we should finish. I don't want to run too late, but like the question here is of people just not being able to hear that.
Mm.
Like Adam said, it was people who were on TikTok the whole time or on Instagram. Or so. There's some kind of very light-hearted relationship. That's late Sanut in verse 22. The clown, someone who's a clown, who thinks that life is funny and makes a joke of everything. Like everything's a joke. Like there's nothing that you would say, well, that's actually pretty serious and I have to work on that, or I have to like to turn everything into something funny is very problematic. Like you could be too simple to get it. That would be like the first thing. Like to be petty is like too simple to get it. Like you just can't get it. And then there's late sanut, which is mockery, where everything's funny. And then there's silim, who just hate. They just hate knowledge. They hate. They just don't want to know about this stuff that you need to know. They don't want to do it. They don't want to go there. That's more like principle. They get it. They just hate it. Like there's different people out there who are incapable of hearing this thing, but she is sure as hell out there saying it loud and clear, and we have the capacity to turn towards it or turn away from it, and the turning away from it is very problematic. If you turn your back on it, she is yearning in verse 23. She says, look, if you just turn towards it when you hear it, then everything will be fine. But if you turn your back on it, you're stuffed.
Kohelet would be appalled by verse 22.
Yes. Why?
Well, because Kohelet is a nihilist. Kohelet thinks that acquiring knowledge is meaningless.
Yes, this is true. They're so different. There's a kind of we'll finish with this. Like, and maybe if anyone has a final comment, that some of the wisdom books are kind of optimistic and some of them are pessimistic. Kohelet is pessimistic and says you can't really acquire anything. This is saying no, it is possible to make progress in life towards chokhmah. You can be someone who acquires wisdom. You can do that, and it involves hearing the thing you don't want to hear and turning towards it in some way, like hearing your own conscience, the way that Laura framed it, or the voice of an improving with the thing that tells you you've done something wrong and actually taking it seriously. That's the capacity, that's the muscle you need to work on, is the ability to hear that you've done something wrong. And if you can't hear that, then you're buggered, because you're turning your back on top of that. You're turning your back on the possibility of self-refinement, and then you won't get wisdom. Has anyone got any final words on this? We'll maybe come back to it next way.
I just want to say that I've acquired a lot of wisdom today. Thank you.
It's so different literature. I mean, for anyone who's used to reading the narratives of the Bible, who hasn't read this kind of stuff, well, I've read it through in the past. So I've read the Bible, but never really learned the book of Proverbs, and it's really different. It's very very different and interesting. It's a different type of.
I think it's great.
It's interesting. Yeah. Okay. Good. So I'm glad that we're getting there, and you're happy to keep carrying on. At some point, we'll just keep digging our way in and see where we get to in terms of the kind of ideas and reflections here. But what we saw today was something really unique. To have a goddess speaking in the Bible is fascinating. Like to have a female personified voice speaking on the streets loudly that you need to listen to is fascinating. And bizarre, like amazing that the Bible contains that voice. Really, tonight there'll be a Shiur for the Morrises. It'll be at the Kellys. It's on the Zoom link.
There's Zoom. Oh, good.
There will be. I assume there'll be a Zoom link tonight. I think so.
Yeah.
What time is it, Joel? Is it 8 o'clock?
8 o'clock. Yeah, and they're sitting 7 nights, so it'll be Thursday night, Friday they'll get up in the morning, and then Saturday night they'll be back again. So it's going to be the whole week running through to Wednesday.
Right.
Joel, can I just ask you, there are some people who used to come to the other Shiur on Pirkei who haven't come back. Yeah. And I think we should contact them. I was thinking about, I can't remember her name for the life of me.
Joanna.
Yes.
She's away. She wrote to me. She's going to try and come. She's going to listen to the recording.
Okay.
She is with her grandchildren. Stop recording.
Joel,